Hey guys, my name's Nick. Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be making a pretty awesome little pedestrian gate, so stay tuned.
Okay guys, so the first thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be cutting the frame of the gate. And this frame is going to be made out of 2-inch square tube with a 14 gauge wall. So that means that the wall of the steel is 3/32 of an inch thick. And this 14 gauge is what I use for pretty much most of my projects. It's heavy enough that it's really good for its rigidity and it'll support a lot of weight, but it's not too heavy and thick that it's a pain to work with. Like this piece right here, which is a 1/4 inch wall, and this is going to be for the post. Now the reason that we've gone 1/4 inch for the post is because as you can see, it's a lot thicker and we don't want that post to flex when we hang the gate on it. So that's why we've done that. Here you can see the entire frame laid out and both of the posts. Both of the posts are going to be 2 feet and a couple inches longer than the gate, and that's just so that they have room to go into the ground. Here I'm just grinding all of the burrs off, and those burrs are created when we cut the steel, and they're sharp and they can get in the way, and when we're doing the fit up they can also interfere with getting a proper fit. So here I am just clamping the work pieces down to the table so that I can get them nice and square before I tack weld them together. I'm just using a carpenter square for a rough square measurement. I'm going to be doing that on both of the sides. You can see it's really important to get a good clamp down on your work surface so that the heat of the welds doesn't move the piece around too much, because it can really mess up your measurements when you do that. So make sure that it's clamped down nice and tight. I'm just doing the last side here, and as you can see, just those little tacks are keeping the frame square and in position. So you still want to be a little bit careful, but as soon as those tacks are on, you pretty much can do whatever you want with the piece, and it's quite strong. Here I'm checking for square with a tape measure, and it was perfect. So you just do that by measuring across on each corner, and if the measurements are the same from corner to corner on both corners, then it's square. So here I am, I'm just going to be welding these corners up. If you guys are enjoying the video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. I post new stuff every Sunday, and I'm going to be doing instructional videos on all sorts of different builds moving forward. Any build that I'm doing in my own business and in my life, I'm going to post here, and I'm going to show you guys how to do it too. Off the corners, you can see exactly how we go from that bead to a flush, smooth surface. And take a look at how I'm using the grinder here. To mimic the corners over there. So when you're grinding these welds off, you want to have your grinder as flat to the work surface as possible so you don't accidentally create any divots in your steel. You want it to be flat and flush. So just imagine that you're using your grinder as a flat surface just to pare down that weld until it reaches the surface. Now I'm going to be pulling in this full-sized 8x4 sheet, and that's what the interior of the gate's going to be made out of. And that interior panel is 1/8 of an inch thick. It's 1/8 of an inch sheet, and I use that because there's going to be a lot of open space in this design, and we don't want the individual panels to be wobbly or to move a lot when the gate is being operated. So now I'm just going to shim it up with 1/2 inch pieces of steel so that it rests in the frame. And I'm going to do that because I want to have an accurate measurement when I trace the interior of the gate out. So it's just putting up one of the corners so it gets nice and snug in there. And I'm going to use a soapstone sharpened to one side, to the flat side, and I'm going to press that soapstone up to the side of that tube, nice and flat and flush, so that I get a really accurate line onto where I need to cut that panel to fit into the frame that we just made. So here's that soapstone. As you can see, it's really visible, nice, clean, easy line to follow. And I'm gonna be cutting this out with my angle grinder. And there's a couple ways you can cut this out. You can use a cold saw, which I have. You can use an angle grinder. You can use a plasma cutter if you have one. But I know most people don't, and they just use their angle grinders. So that's what I'm gonna be showing you today. It's kind of an art getting a straight cut with an angle grinder. There's a couple things you can do. You can clamp a straight edge down right next to the line and follow that straight edge. Or you could do what I'm doing right now, which is just using the weight of the angle grinder to just go in a straight line. And as you can see here, I've scored the steel with the angle grinder, so it's not cut in one pass, but just tracing that line with a light touch and then following it through with the grinder again as you come in for the next pass is the best way to get a straight line. So here the sheet is all cut out, and now we're going to be using 1-inch blocks to shim it up, and that way we can put our frame onto the surface of it, and one of the sides of that sheet is going to be right there, and that's going to be the front. So that sheet's going to be exactly halfway between the bottom and the top of the frame. So this is going to be the top of the frame right here, so it's exactly centered in that frame. And I'm just using a soapstone and a level to get my design, and I'm marking out each cutout that we're going to be doing, because these are all going to be cut out, and we need a way to remember where they're going to go when we put them back into the frame. So here we go again, just putting another cutting wheel on the grinder and cutting out the design on the frame, or cutting out the design on the panels. So here we are, we've cut all the panels out, and now all we're going to be doing is just grinding those burrs off so that they're a little bit easier to work with. We're going to do a rough fit up of the panels where they're going to go in the gate, and then since I want the front of the gate to be to not have any welds on it, we're going to flip everything up backwards and then put it down there. So now we're working on the back of the gate. Since we flipped it over, we're going to block it up with those 1-inch panels, and we're just going to run maybe 1 to 3 inch weld beads on the sides of each of those panels, and that's going to be more than enough to keep them rigid in the frames. It's important to remember to weld close to the open space on these panels, so I'm making sure to run the biggest beads right at the edges of these joints so that they're really locked into place here. Alright, so it's all welded up, and as you can see, that's all it's going to take to keep all of those sheets rigid in there. So now let's move on to the posts, and we're going to be capping those posts. And we cap the posts so that no water will go inside. Here I am just kind of doing a nice little rough pass with the welder capping those posts. It's pretty important to do this aesthetically because you don't want to have these big gaping holes in the posts. And you also have to take into account the height of the caps. As you can see here, these caps are about 1/8 of an inch thick, which is going to add 1/8 of an inch to both of the posts. It's not really a big deal for this project because these posts are going to be going to the ground. So I'm going to be adjusting the posts at the job site. But if you were doing another project where you had to cap a piece of steel, you definitely have to take into account the thickness of that cap that you're putting in there, because it can just totally throw off your entire build if you forget to take into account the thickness of the caps. Now I'm just grinding all of those welds flush, and as you can see here again, it's the same as when we were doing the other ones. We're just trying to get it nice and flat, get the corners to be rounded again like they are on just the tube. Now we're going to be cutting out pieces of steel for the latch. The latch is going to rest on these pieces, and we'll go over that in a little while when we actually welding the latch up. So the big pieces are going to be the pegs that the latch is going to rest on, and the small pieces are the latch itself. You can see here I'm just taking the burrs out and putting little bevels on each of the pieces, just so that they're a little bit more aesthetically pleasing and they look a little bit more finished. The latch is just going to consist of a U made out of this 1/4 inch steel bar, and that U is going to go into the gate in a hole that we're going to make, and that's going to be what's going to keep the gate closed. So we'll see that more in a little bit. Now we're welding the pegs onto the post, and these pegs are what the latch is going to rest on. We're making them a little bit extra long right now in the shop, just so that we can cut them down on site if we need to. It's nice to just be able to know that you're going to have enough space for this latch to rest on, and then make those adjustments accordingly when you're there. So here's the latch. As you can see, I've drilled a hole in the gate itself. This is the top corner of the gate, and that latch is just going to hug the other post and rest on those pegs, and it's going to keep it closed. Just flipping the gate over now so that we can put one of the posts there, and we can start working on the hinges. Here is the gate and the post, what it's going to be like as it is in the ground.
The hinge that we're going to be using, and it is a 4-inch bullet hinge. So it's 4 inches from here to here, and it is just this one piece right here is a solid piece, this guy, and then we got this little washer here, and that's going to make it go a little bit smoother as you open it. So this bottom hinge with this peg right here is going to be the post side, and that's going to be the post side because when we have this gate and the post is in, we're just going to be able to take the gate on and off, slide the gate on and off if we need to, and that's for repairs, if you need to move something in and out. Just it's nice to be able to do that. So this post side has a flange right here, and this flange is going to go right on the post, and that's what we're going to weld to. This gate side also has that same flange, but that flange is going to go right there. So when this is all said and done, this post isn't going to be able to move, and this gate is going to rotate just like that. When we weld this, we're going to make sure it's perfectly straight. Then we're going to take our welder, give it a tack here, give it a tack here, so it locks it in position. Then we're just going to run this bead and run that bead, and then we're done.
So let's start welding this up. Like we said, we're going to just start by tacking the corners of these hinges and then running full beads throughout. You want to make sure that these are welded properly, as they're going to be supporting the entire weight of the gate. So here's that second pair of hinges. Each one of these hinges is rated for a good amount of weight, and you can get them in different sizes no matter what kind of build that you're doing. And you can also get ones that have greasers in them so that you can just spray some WD-40 in there without actually having to take the gate off. But here we go, and as you can see, the hinges are on. You can take the gate on and off of the posts. And now we're moving on to the final finishing last finishing touches for the edges of these panels, we're just going to be taking our grinder and we're going to be grinding a slight bevel onto the sides of each of these panels, and that's to just make them look a little bit more finished. Now we're going to take some lacquer thinner and wipe off the print that our supplier has put on those panels. And here we go. There's the gate. It's all finished. It's all welded up. And our next step is to put our patina on. And I'll be covering that in the next video. So thank you guys so much for sticking around. Like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.